So for those who are just tuning in for the first time to this is an interview series for migrating to France, essentially, because we're going to just avoid the whole expat immigrant argument by just using migration. I like that. That's the new term, the new vogue. So, Christina, I've been following your content for some years now, and you have a lot of great content for people that are making this journey. And I wanted to bring you on here just to get the benefit of your expertise for people who are out there that are trying to figure this out. Having done it myself, and you did it, I think about 8 years ago, as I recall, in Paris. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
Paris,
cool.
France.
So, yes. Well, between us, we have France covered in the north and south anyway.
Yeah.
So between Nice and Paris. But I wanted to. I know that a big part of what you do in your work and also your content in your channel is about visas, which the most important thing for people is like kind of like, what visa should I get? That's the question I see all the time. I'm sure you do too.
Yeah, it's honestly the hardest part of moving over here is just figuring out how to get over here, and doing the actual visa process is a lot easier. It's just figuring out which visa is out there for you and kind of navigating it with your long-term plan for France.
Yeah, exactly. So for people that are really new to this and trying to figure it out, can you kind of give us like a brief explanation of France's visa system to an American or somebody else that's never dealt with it before?
Sure, of course. So there's obviously each section has a few visa types in it, but the main visas are student visas, au pair visas, work visas. There's a lot of subcategories of the work visa. Same with the talent visa, which can be linked to work as well. And those are kind of the main visas. And then of course, each one has subcategories, and all of those are basically the reason you're coming to France. And so instead of looking for what visa you need, it's more about looking for what your purpose in France is going to be and what your main priorities are. Of course, if it's to make money, to grow a business, we have to, gear the visa search towards that. Or if you're looking for get an education, we have to gear it towards that. So it's really about finding your reasoning and then also one of the main visa types.
Right, which is then going to drive which visa type you might choose. So from a top level too, I know that people hear a lot of terms and they can get confused about it. So can you give us like just the key differences between like a visa per se versus a residency permit? Like people hear about carte de séjour and other things. Can you give kind of a top level overview of that?
Course, yeah. A visa is actually what everyone has. Everyone has a visa in their passport. It comes with their passport. For example, Americans have 3 months on their passport to come into Europe, and that's actually a visa already. You can get a long-term visa, which is something that they put inside your passport before you arrive in France. So that's whatever you get when you're in the US or in Canada or whatever. And that's only to get you into France. Then it's, obviously has an end date, but before that you have to validate it, and that's what turns it into a residency. And now you're a resident in France. And then the carte de séjour, which you mentioned, is actually it's the translation of a residency card. And that's what you have for the following year. So you only have a visa for that first year and first 3 months actually. And then afterwards turns into a residency card, which you can turn into a long-term permit as well. And then maybe citizenship one day as well.
Right. And does that also include like the 10-year that you can get later? Does
Yeah,
that fall into the same?
that's a residency permit as well. It's just a
That's a
longer
residence permit
longer
as well.
version of it.
Right. And there are people that don't even seek, for example, citizenship. They sometimes
Yeah,
just go for the long term, the 10-year, and they just plan on renewing it. And so it's important to say that just because I think that, some people get locked into, I'm on a citizenship track, which is cool if you want that, but you can end up staying in France long term without seeking citizenship, just like people could theoretically do that in the United States as well.
exactly. And that shouldn't be everyone's goal. I don't think it is everyone's goal, but sometimes they get lost, like you said, with, wanting to stay long term, and they're like, okay, well now I have to become French. And actually that's not what it's to be. I think, sometimes you just want to be in France long term, and that's okay, but you don't feel French, or you don't necessarily align with all of the values of France, which is okay. And you can still live there, of course. And a lot of people do that everywhere. So you don't necessarily need to become French to, live here long term. And that's really important to bring up as well.
Yeah, definitely. No, and I'm glad you reiterated that because I really do think people don't realize these things. It's like we gloss over the basics sometimes and we jump into all these detailed things about this visa type or that visa type, and it's like, well, hold on, like what's going on up here? So
Yeah,
on that
yeah.
note, could you walk us through the main visa types that are available for the average person? For example, an American, it's a lot of our audience here, but you know, and I don't expect you to give like massive detail for every single type, but just kind of at a top view, what are the ones that most Americans coming to France tend to be looking at?
These days, the long stay visitor visa is huge. You're able to come for a year at least and renew that while you stay here, and that allows you to live in France, like a visitor. But then also, Americans have been using it to work remotely. So that's a really good visa these days. There's also, of course, the student visa, which you can use to do a higher education or to take language courses. So that's also pretty interesting and relatively easy to get, based on the harder ones. I'm kind of going from the easiest to the hardest here.
Yeah.
Um,
Can I ask a clarifying question on that? What is the requirement of enrollment for the student visa?
Yeah, you need 20 hours a week minimum for at least 4 months. Obviously, the more the better because the duration of your visa will be based off that, give or take a couple weeks. So the more you can do, the better. And something to know also on the student visa is you're able to work for 964 hours student visa year. So that's also an appealing aspect of that visa. Besides that, there are the work visas. There's the entrepreneur visa. There is the standard employment visa. And then there's also some talent visas. There's a lot of subcategories of the talent one, but that's usually for highly qualified employees or artists, business creation as well.
Specialized skill that they
Exactly.
have
Yeah.
in the town. But
Hmm.
also you mentioned so the business entrepreneur one can be under that talent as well. There's a connection to that.
Yeah.
What would be an example of somebody for example that might get that the talent visa that you've worked with?
It's more if you want to create, open up a physical store in France, or if you are ready. The main difference, requirement wise, is that you're ready to invest 30,000 euros into a business versus the entrepreneur visa is more, flip freelancing on online work, you know, more or
Yeah.
less looser requirements than the 30,000 euro financial requirement.
Yeah, I really appreciate the specificity that you're giving, like the 20 hours of students and the 30,000 euro, because these are the things that people go, oh, okay, like this is when the light bulbs go on and people are like, okay, that
Yeah.
might be possible for me. Depending on what the life you want, because there's a million different types of lives you might want to have in France as a, a retired person, as a semi-retired person, as a student, depending on who you are. And then I think also a thing to mention for people that, and I know some people that did this is, as far as the students, sometimes people think, well, I'm too old for college. And it's like, you could go to a language school and take 20 hours of language a week, which is what my friends, Patrick and Catherine did that are still there in Nice. And that's how they started there. They were on that visa and, then you can move on to different visas. You can also switch visas over time, things like that. So
That's very important to note too, is that you can switch visas once you get over to France. A lot of people, I think, focus on the fact that, this is not the perfect visa for me, or I'm too old to go back to school. So they eliminate that visa when in fact it could be a good way to come over to France and then, switch over to stay long term in France. So it's really important to be open minded when you're looking at visa options and not just, eliminating it from the sounds of it. Like visitor, oh, I don't want to be a visitor, automatically eliminated. I don't want to be a student, automatically eliminated. When in fact, it could actually open a lot of doors for you and just kind of be a gateway into France.
yeah. Now you said something earlier I want to drill into, which was about being able to work. And you mentioned the long stay visa, I believe. And I don't know if you were talking about the VLSTS, which is the one that's renewable. And were you referencing that one, or were you talking about some of the other long stay types? Because this is like a
No,
whole
yeah.
can of worms. But I want
Yeah,
to,
I
yeah,
know, no.
you know where I'm
I
going. You know where
was
I'm going here.
was hesitant to say that, but honestly, it's good to clear it up. There was a lot of confusion that came out this summer about it, but at the moment, the VLSTS, which is the long stay visitor visa, you are allowed to work remotely in France on it. By how long this is going to be valid, we don't know, but at the moment, from the U.S. consulate, from the US, French consulate in the U.S., they are approving it.
Hey, I want to thank my guest and I want to thank you guys for being with me today. If you're interested in this topic, I highly recommend today's sponsor, which is fabfrenchinsurance.com. They provide the medical insurance that you're going to need to do things like get a visa in France and so forth. So definitely check them out. They also offer other types of insurance like home insurance, car insurance, so forth. So definitely check them out, and we'll see you in the next episode.